I'm Julia Melville, and I'm running a series of podcasts looking at some of the different options that can support us to get beyond the thinking mind, to help relieve and release stress, anxiety and fear. I am intrigued and fascinated by the language of energy, how energy impacts our minds and our bodies, the relationship we have with that energy, where we hold energy, how we use our energy, and how we can shift our energy. With my own journey, I am continually exploring how to shift and release from the stories I was repeatedly telling myself from a young age. I am a BACP accredited psychotherapist and counsellor, and I worked for many years at a mental health charity before setting up my own private practice. 5 years ago, I completed my Kundalini Yoga Level 1 teacher training, and this practice continues to support me every day of my life. I love teaching and showing people a different way of being beyond speaking. I am also a theta healing practitioner and instructor. It's these 3 trainings that are intertwined through my work now as a mentor, supporting people to release unhelpful repetitive patterns of behaviour. I'm not here to tell you what to do, but it was recently whilst thinking about my own shifts that I decided to create a series of podcasts looking at different options, talking to inspirational people also working with well-being and healing in a variety of modalities. I really hope you enjoy the podcasts as much as I have enjoyed creating them. And in the words of John O'Donoghue, awaken to the mystery of being here and enter the quiet immensity of your own presence.
Hello everybody, and welcome to this podcast with the most wonderful person who I am a huge fan of. Jo and I have been trying to remember when we first met, but we can't remember. But what I do know is that she has helped me so much with looking at trauma, pain, emotional wounds from a really different healing perspective. And I have a lot of time and admiration for you. And I'd like to introduce Jo Beth to you, Jo Beth Young. Jo Beth is the founder of Wildness Rising and an internationally acclaimed musician, songwriter and recording artist. She's become one of the best kept secrets and go-to mentors for noted spiritual teachers, authors, artists, creatives, light leaders and heart-based entrepreneurs for over a decade. In tongue-in-cheek fashion, she calls herself the rock and roll guide to the underworld. Having been there herself, she believes it's been a gift that enables her to walk others through the dark night of the soul with deep understanding, fierce love, kindness and courage, and to the ultimate discovery of who they truly are. And I can definitely vouch for all of that. So welcome, Jo. It's so lovely to have you here.
Thank you, Julia. What an amazing introduction. And so lovely to be here. What a beautiful opportunity to talk about some wonderful subjects that I'm so passionate about. So thank you so much for having me.
Absolute pleasure. And as you know, we're looking at different ways of how to support ourselves beyond the chatter of the mind and how to support ourselves. Particularly, it seems particularly relevant at the moment with where we are with COVID and all that's happening. So yeah, if you could share a bit about your work, and that would be amazing.
So it's really hard for me to know where to start with this, really. I think the spiritual path has always been in my life. I think I was sort of born as much a spiritual seeker as a creative, and I think the two really go together. But I never envisioned I would work in that area in my life. It was just a part of everyday life, I suppose. And along the way, I just ended up getting a lot of signs and prompts to go down this road. And I've always wanted to help people. I think all of my work's always had the intention of supporting and helping in any way I could. But I think how I ended up doing this work, first of all, would have been through my own spiritual journeys, awakenings, for want of a better word, or insights. So the work I do now is I really try and support particularly women. It's not only women. I do work with men as well, but I tend to resonate more with women because I am a woman. I can see the perspective a lot more. But I work with what I call inner wildness. And to me, if we were to look at this from a non-duality perspective, it would be the same as our non-dual natural state. And I think that's who we are before we're domesticated and before we're trained to be something else. Absolutely. So that's in a nutshell what I do.
Amazing. Just it is, and it's hard to describe how powerful it is, I think, and the impact of it and the energy releases that come with this way of working.
Yeah, I think because I have combined my work with energy work, and the reason for that was purely through my own physical journey in my early 20s, when I was really debilitated with serious illness myself. So I had fibromyalgia and I had ME and the two and endometriosis. So I always call it a hat trick of immune disorders. And it was a really just a very debilitating situation to be in. And I tried absolutely everything. I had specialist surgery, I tried every diet possible, acupuncture, Chinese medicine, and I went down this very long road for almost a decade, actually, trying to get better. Wow. And where my life changed is when I went for a bioenergy healing. And my friend over here in Ireland offered me the healing, and she was basically training at the time, and I was one of her first guinea pigs, if you like. And I remember going, and I'd been in debilitating pain for years at that time. Even getting up off my seat was just a no-go. My hair was falling out, my whole thyroid was, having real issues with that. So I went thinking, oh, well, it won't do anything because I've tried everything, but I like her, so I'm going to do it for her, which in retrospect is the most arrogant thing ever. But the result was that I had a mind-blowing experience during the session, an absolute, quantum leap, where I realized that, my body was in the middle of my energy field, that I'd always thought that my energy was inside my body, and suddenly in that moment during the session I realized that I was enormous, as we all are, and that I was looking back down at my body like a reed sort of flapping in the middle of my energy field, and I almost fainted at that point because it was quite overwhelming. But I went on to work with her and with another amazing bioenergy therapist, and both of them said, you have a real talent at this, you've got a real gift. Have you ever thought of working in this area? So eventually, just as I was graduating music college, I actually then went and trained in bioenergy, and it was absolutely the best decision I could have made. And in my work now, I do still use the bioenergy. I don't use it perhaps always in the way I would have traditionally used it when I started. But I find if you use that combination of energy work with bringing people into awareness of their true nature, bringing them back home to who they are, then the energy work can just assist lifting blocks and especially outmoded patterns and beliefs. It's just what it does that I love is that we don't have to therapize, as I call it. We don't have to go through therapy about all these terrible things that happen to us.
Agree totally.
We can let them go with the energy.
Yeah, I agree totally. Can you explain for the listeners and for those who aren't familiar with bioenergy, what in a nutshell, what bioenergy, kind of what's involved?
I can tell you what's involved if you're in the room with someone, which is you basically sit or lie down, and it's an energy treatment where you don't put your hands on the person, it's distant from the person. So it's not like Reiki, you're not thinking of symbols or anything like that at all. In fact, it's best to think nothing. I find to be create as blank a canvas as you can. And you work with the energy field in a way similarly to how a plumber would work with plumbing. That's the way I see it. You're just cleaning energy lines such as meridians, auric fields, different organs of the body that you can feel have blocks, inflammation. And this is done intuitively. And I can't tell you how I learned it because it's not really, for me, it wasn't really a learning thing. It was a feeling and understanding thing, although there is a protocol. So it's very non-invasive and can be done distantly.
Yes, that's certainly how I've experienced it with you, distantly. And what I'm always amazed by is the feelings that I have. And when I talk to you afterwards and I say, well, I felt as though something was crawling on my skin, or I felt whatever I might have been feeling, you say, oh yeah, that's when I was doing such and such. And we're hundreds of miles apart. So
yes,
I just love how energy work. And I know through my own work that energy works like this. I mean, it's just incredible.
It's amazing. And it's really hard to describe, isn't it? I'm not a scientist, and I always say to people that I can't scientifically tell you how or why I can work with someone thousands of miles away, just as you can, and how all of that can be sensed and seen. I know that the heart field, as we know from heart math, and the energy field is endless. If we really want to look at it from that perspective, we are all one energy melding together with our own perfume or flavor. But the way I always approach it with people is I say it yields results. And if it didn't yield results, I wouldn't do it anymore. And the day it stops yielding results will be the day I stop. But it does yield results. And I learned that firsthand, being treated and actually overcoming what was considered incurable illness for me. And I can tell you there's not a day I don't get up off my seat and go, wow, look, I can just stand up off my seat now, which was to me absolutely undoable at one point.
Yeah, which is incredible.
Yeah.
Really, really incredible. I was just going to ask you something about the bioenergy, and it's gone out of my mind, so it will come back when it needs to. I was thinking also about, because of course you are an artist as well, and I know on the retreats that I've been on with you that we've done really amazing meditations and then painted afterwards, which is something that you've taught me and I have then continued on to do. So is that something that you're still sharing with people? And
absolutely. I think at the moment, because I've been so in my music world the last few years, I've tried not to overwhelm with too much things going on at once, or too many offerings going on at once. But the painting side, like the music, has been with me since I was a child. And my actual original dream was to be an art teacher. I thought that's what I would be when I grew up, not knowing that life had other plans. But it's still there, and it goes through phases. And it's interesting, I've just moved out, as I was telling you before the podcast, nearer to a river, and already feeling inspired to paint and to work with that. So I definitely still do that, and it will come. It comes in and out.
Yeah, yes, absolutely. When you feel drawn to it.
Absolutely,
Yeah.
it is a healing art, isn't it?
Definitely, absolutely, definitely. There was something you said earlier, which I remembered what I was going to say to you. There was something that you said earlier about learning the bioenergy healing, that although you've learned it one way, you actually practice in another way. And I think that's what's so wonderful about this sort of work, that we get the basis of the learning, but then we bring in our own flavor to it, which I think is so important. And our, because as you've often told me, we are completely unique, each and every one of us. And so we bring in our own energy and our own force to it. And I think that's wonderful. So as much as you read a textbook, I think you do that basic bit and then you go on.
Absolutely. And I think we always have to remember that the way that textbooks and, courses and qualifications and theory came around, including music theory or mathematical theory, is that it came about to explain something after the fact. We didn't write those things to invent them. So what I mean by that is that healing is innate in all beings. I think everyone has a very natural healing capacity, probably from thousands of years of self-healing from our ancestors when they weren't equipped with hospitals and modern medicine. So as much as we learn protocols, and they're very fantastic to learn, especially for, protecting clients and keeping things professional and to a high standard, outside of that, I think it's really important to listen to your own innate way of healing, because you do have that knowledge, And you could really be missing a trick if you bypass that and stick to the textbook, I always think.
Yeah, I agree totally. And I think that innate knowing of healing, but actually for so many people, it's really difficult to access that point.
Yes. Yeah.
And yeah, I wonder, yeah, do you want to expand on that?
Yeah, absolutely. I think I'm not religious in any way, but there is a line in the Bible. There's lots of lines in the Bible I find deeply helpful and fantastic. And one of them is, where 2 or more people gather in my name, there I am. And I think with healing, even though we all have a capacity to heal ourselves, having a secondary person there to hold the space and energy for you does allow it to happen. And I always say with energy work that it's not me doing the work and it's not you doing the work. It's not any practitioner or therapist or guru actually doing the work. The person's energy field will go back to a healthy normal. It will go back to its kind of resting position, if you like, if it's allowed to. And oftentimes that's just getting the mind out of the way. We can be so trapped in our heads, and the body is innocent. The body's trying to catch up with this tangle that's often going on up the top of the body. So we do actually heal ourselves in the end, even if we think it's via the healer. The healer is a conduit for the person to remember how to heal themselves, but the remembering is to actually forget all the other stuff that you think you are, if that makes sense.
Absolutely, it does, totally. And it makes me think actually about, because as you know, I originally trained as a counsellor and a psychotherapist, and then I sort of moved away from that into Kundalini yoga, because I realised we needed to have more than speaking. And then since then have discovered theta healing and access consciousness, which are very much energy work. So I absolutely get that it's how we can then move beyond the stories that we tell ourselves.
Absolutely. And therapy and counselling really does have a time and place. It's not defunct or void.
Absolutely.
Yeah, totally. It's really, really valuable, but there comes a point when there's only so far that takes you, because we can end up perpetuating the story, and even worse, we can continue to perpetuate an identity, for instance, as a victim or a trauma survivor or an addict, whatever that story might be for us, that is actually causing us a lot of pain that we're fighting against. And what energy work and Kundalini work and all of these beautiful, ancient but incredibly powerful practices allow us to do is to have, in a way, a clean slate, to press the reset button energetically and to go beyond the story and to actually question if the stories are true, which is something we are just not educated to do. We're really taught that everything we think is real. And the issue with that is what you thought yesterday, you don't necessarily think today. So you have proof that what you liked when you were 10, you don't like now. So you know that your thoughts are like weather. You know that they're changeable. But when we grab onto a thought, particularly one that feels very juicy and potent about who we are, and we grab onto that, it can cause what I call like an energy calcification. So we create an identity on top of our natural, breathable, porous selves, and we start to calcify with identities and ideas of who we are. And energy work can help to sort of marinate and decalcify all those thoughts and patterns and ideas so that we can breathe again and we can start to remember what actually matters to us in life, not what we think should matter.
Absolutely, because I like the thought of the decalcification, but that it calcifies it, because it is so sometimes so intense. And I remember myself, the stories I told myself, they were so believable, they were so real, they were so heavy.
Oh my goodness, they are. And also, you know yourself working with energy that when you're around someone with a lot of thought forms, it's palpable. You can feel the weight of someone that has a lot of heavy identity. And, we talk about the ego like this thing we've got to get rid of, and I always joke about this. It's as if it's Fred that lives with us or something, and if only we could get rid of it, we'd be awake or enlightened. And we don't really understand what the ego is. We understand the effects of the ego. We understand the negative ego, the positive ego. We get that. So we can see the results of the ego, but we can't see the source. But actually, the source of the ego is just calcified thought forms. That's all the ego actually really is. It's a mass, if you like, of identification. And as we let go of those identities, which is frightening, because the ego itself doesn't want us to let go of those identities, because it will lose its position, in the building. It will no longer be the CEO. If we get rid of these ideas, it will become demoted to the reception, which is where the ego belongs. It doesn't belong in the operating of the company, as I always think. So, we get a lot of resistance, but once that's calcification drops, we feel more healthy, we feel more vibrant, we feel more relaxed, and we feel more we start to enjoy life, because we start to see life as it is, not as we think it is, not as we think it should be. We stop being at war with what's going on, and we start to actually welcome it. Even the considered bad stuff, we have the capacity to hold that in our lives rather than fight and defend and push it away to the periphery. And that really makes life something ultra special, and really what I believe is how we're designed to live, really.
Absolutely, I agree, because actually what comes up for me when you're talking is that it really brings us freedom.
Total freedom, because there's nothing left to control anymore.
Yeah.
When you have a lot of identity, you've got a lot to defend. If you say I'm this kind of person, or I'm that kind of person, and these are the things I do, you have to defend it. And something interesting you said a minute ago, Julia, when you were saying, you remember what it was like when you had those, heavy identities. And I bet when you did, everyone around you helped you agree with those identities most of the time. So yeah. Not only isn't that the case, so yeah. Not only do you have this identity, but you almost have what I consider the jury, nodding and agreeing with you, because we live in a world of identity, and we're up there pleading our case. I am this, I am that. And in a nutshell, without sounding too abstract, I am is the end of the sentence. There is no addition after that. I am. That's it. Anything else I add to that is fluctuating and is subject to change at any moment in time. So nothing I put at the end of that sentence, I am, can actually really be me. So I am angry, I am sad, I am lonely. Those are all very genuine feelings, but they are going to change.
Yeah. I
am is never going to change.
There's a beautiful Kundalini mantra meditation, I am, where you have a hand movement, and it is basically, I am what I am. And the reason they say that you'd say the second I am is because the mind needs, otherwise you say I am angry, sad, whatever, the mind goes off on a tangent. And so it sort of concentrates the mind in. Yeah.
I love that so much, and it's true. That's it. It does, because the ego has to complete the sentence. So I am that I am is beautiful, because that's it. There is nothing more than that. And when you drop out of needing to attach to the ends of those sentences, the world around you may not appear to agree with you to begin with. They may keep trying to complete the sentence for you. And that's why it can feel very challenging to let go of identity, even though the rewards for doing so are indescribable and are freedom, because from that point onwards, you can actually, for the first time in your life, give yourself a real chance to live. Actually give yourself a chance to fully live without these stories. And about your age, what you're capable of, what you think you're supposed to do. When all that is gone, the world is your oyster, you know, to coin a phrase. There's nothing you can't do. And that's the pure freedom. Nothing anybody ever puts on the end of that sentence will ever be real for you again. So you gain personal freedom, and you also gain massive compassion, because you understand when people are suffering, it's often that they've completed that sentence and have hung on to it, and you really can feel great compassion for that, and where you would have been angry once.
Absolutely. I think that's just so beautifully put. I couldn't agree with you more. And what I'm thinking while you're talking is that it's also, you know, when I think about my own journey, and I'm thinking also about when you were so unwell, it's almost hard to believe that you're ever going to get past that place. Yeah, I don't think and I don't say this from an egoic place. I do feel now it's just shifted so much, and I now laugh at the things that I used to tell myself. I mean, it was ridiculous. But that desperate desire to fit in and conform and all the rest of it drove all of it.
Oh my goodness, absolutely. And also, you know, we have to be compassionate and understand that under everything in life, and you and I have talked about this many times, but under everything, there are hundreds of fears in life, but under everything is the fear of abandonment. You know, and if we go back to tribal times, if we were abandoned by the tribe, that was serious trouble for us. You know, we needed to be in the tribe to survive the predatory attacks of wild animals or invading tribes. You know, we were reliant on each other in community. And in the way we live now, we are reliant on each other but in a different way. And we can live much more separate, perhaps, lives than we once could. But the need to belong and be accepted and approved of is overwhelming. And especially the time we are living in at this very moment, where a lot of what we are seeing around us is based on identity. You know, all social media is a form of identity advertisement in a strange way. So it takes even more willpower, well, not willpower, that's not the right word. It takes more courage actually to detach from your identity, I think, perhaps than it did even, 10, 15 years ago. But when you do look at the things you thought in the past, they are funny. There is a great lightness, and actually, that when you said that, it also reminded me of something else as well, which is one of the things that holds people back, I've noticed, is that in the spiritual path, they think to be spiritual is to be knowledgeable and to have a great deal of knowledge. And knowledge can be associated with deep seriousness and this idea that, you've worked really hard on this spiritual path, and you've tried all these things, and you've studied really hard, and now you're getting somewhere. But there isn't actually anywhere to get. And when you realize that, it's very light, it's buoyant. You can drop the story of there even being a spiritual path which has some sort of beginning, middle, or end. And often seriousness is not, and spirituality are considered to go together, but in my experience, they're not, because at core, you are in a childlike, innocent state. Not childish, but in a childlike, buoyant state.
Yeah, joy and freedom.
Of joy and freedom. And of course, you'll still feel all those emotions. You're not bypassing things when you drop identity. And when you drop out of the mind, you still feel grief or rage or sadness, and you still feel all those things. But the difference I've noticed since that change happened upon me is that they no longer get congested. I might feel things at enormous capacity, and it travels through me because I'm not pushing it away. I'm really allowing it, and then I find it leaves. But that whole what we resist persist thing is very, very true. And if we judge ourselves for having these feelings, then that's a form of resistance. So we have to actually approach our own experiences with a lack of judgment and be more curious about, oh, that's anger arising now. That's interesting. Rather than, I'm not meant to feel angry. I'm not meant to feel this.
Which is such a conditioning, yeah.
100%.
Yeah,
It's like,
yeah.
it's bad to be angry. It's not spiritual. It's not kind, you know, but it's human and it's natural. Animals get angry. You know,
I know, then they have a good shake and they shake it all off and it's gone, and that's that.
That's it. They're not there afterwards, like eating muffins, thinking that they shouldn't have been angry. I was just saying actually to my partner last night, so this is relevant, but it's quite funny, because our cat is our constant guru and form of entertainment all at the same time. But I'd been reading recently that someone was saying when you're enlightened, you go above thought, you go beyond thought. And someone asked this person, I can't remember who it is, but they said, you know, what about animals? Because animals are always living in the moment. They're not really hanging on to things in the way we do. And they said the animals were below the level of thought, and that's why they're always in the moment. And I was just saying, I just don't believe that.
No.
I think they're above thought. I think that's our need to be special and different as humans, isn't it?
I think so. I think animals are above thought. I have I have 3 dogs, and one of them is a Jack Russell, and she is highly sensitive and intuitive, I think. And one time when I was down staying with my mum, the dog was really, really upset. Oti, she's called, and mum was in a really, really deep sleep, and Oti kept growling at her to try and help her wake up. So I think I think animals are highly tuned and intuitive.
I think they are too. I really believe that. But I also just love that we as a species have been ingrained to think we're so special and different. And I call it the cult of special and different, you know. It's that's another thing that when you get into remembering your true position, that goes as well. The need to be special or different is gone as well, because you realize that you're not, and that's not depressing by any standard. You are unique, of course, because you have your own flavor, your own essence, your own fingerprint. There's no one can do things in this world the way you can do them. No one will ever be able to do them like you after you've gone or before you got here. So in that way you are totally unique, but the need to be special and different separates us so much from each other and causes such conflict. And I think that's something that just dissolves in the fire of presence, really. You're quite happy to be ordinary again.
I agree totally, and I can totally resonate with that, because I went through school definitely feeling special and different, and I think it's the inner critic, my understanding of it, or the ego, whatever you want to call it, I think, and it didn't serve me well in any way. I know I had to go through it, but it's a hard place to come out of.
Absolutely. Well, you know, everything around us in the, you know, consumer world that we're trained into sells special and different. You know, it's a really potent marketing technique that if you do this, you're going to be special and different. So I don't know if there's a human alive that's escaped going through that in some way. And it's coming out the other end of it, really, and understanding. I think for me, the biggest breakthrough with that personally was understanding that a small life, a very simple life, is actually a very potent, big, beautiful life. It doesn't have to look like anything special on the outside, but it can be incredibly rich on the inside. And that value becomes more intense as time goes on. The more you're in that inner state, I think that just solidifies, and you no longer go looking for experiences that you think are going to make things better than they are, because everything here is actually pretty amazing.
Yeah. Yeah, no, I agree. And I think one of the things I love about energy work is how it expands us out. And certainly my experience with you has been how it expands you out beyond the physical body, I guess, is what I'm trying to say. So that you are shown a different perspective. And so then we can become aware of actually how much more we are than just what we see in front of us or in the mirror.
Totally. I think that experience really helps us to, mentally at least, because the mind, I always think, is like the slowest processor in the body and takes much longer time to digest things than the rest of your body. So if the mind can grasp something, then, you're kind of winning because once the mind can grasp something, things can really click. So I think what you're describing there with energy work is that the mind can suddenly grasp, I am not just this. I am more than this. I am actually part of the universe. It's not just a nice bumper sticker from the 60s or something. It's real. I'm actually physically experiencing it. And that knowledge, that actual experiential, the mind can't argue with that anymore. And so it drops into being curious about what it is to be part of everything rather than feeling actually quite isolated in our singular experiences.
Oh gosh, and I think that happens for so many people. Certainly a lot of clients that I work with, the majority of them over the years have felt really isolated from themselves.
Totally. I think that's it. People feel isolated and often very, very misunderstood, or, searching for communion, it's something that we have kind of lost in some senses, but I think is still there for sure. I always go back to this, I cannot remember where I read it now. I think it was a guy called Rory something. My memory of names is terrible, so forgive me. But this line that this guy wrote absolutely profoundly really touched me when I read it. And he said, we all know that people want to be seen, heard, and understood. Everybody knows that. But there's two other elements that we also need to be welcome, or to feel peace. And one is to be made to feel welcome and to be unshamed. And I thought this was so profoundly touching because the sort of sense of shaming that can go on in our part of the world anyway for feeling certain emotions, or acting out certain emotions is incredibly, you only have to look at Twitter if you want to see that in a nutshell, really. But it makes people feel incredibly isolated and insular and misunderstood. So what I always feel about this position of presence that we're really talking from and about is that in that position, everything in life and everyone in life is let off the hook, if you like, including yourself. There's no longer a need to project shame or feel shame around your feelings. So that sense of isolation does actually dissolve. It starts to sort of again go in the fire of presence, because you can be alone, but you can feel very unlonely. And you can be in company and feel lonely, as we all know. But when you're in this place of presence, it doesn't matter which one you're in. You are so present with yourself that scenery change does not affect your sense of whether you feel isolated or not anymore.
Absolutely. And I think that is, yes, really lovely and really powerful message, actually. And it makes me think about, because as you say, there's a lot of there can be judgment and things around how we're meant to be in society. And I know myself, when I first started my training for my psychotherapy training, that people said, oh, but that's all about navel gazing. But actually, as you've just so succinctly said, we want to come into this full presence. It's not about I'm better than anybody or ego or anything like that, but actually to come fully into our own who we are is just so incredible, and all those other things fall away.
absolutely. As a wise man once said, there's no better use of your life than to find out who you truly are. And we're often told that it's very, as you say, selfish, that it's, you know, an inward gaze or a navel gazing. I love that. And again, quite insular. But actually, you know, the way I see it is that it's like everything is through a filter. You know, you're hearing sound right now. I assume you're hearing the same sound as me, but I'm only assuming that. I have no idea how you hear things. I have no idea how you see color or, you know, smell scent, or, you know, we're all having a completely unique experience. And something that struck me years ago, when I'd been single for quite a long time, and I remember walking along the river edge one evening on a really balmy night, barefoot. You know, it's one of those really glorious evenings where the sun is just absolutely coral. And I remember sitting there thinking, oh, it's so sad. This is such a romantic moment, and I've got no one to share it with. And I had this brilliant realization in that moment that even if I was there with this, you know, imaginary romantic partner or whatever, that the wind in my hair would feel the same, that the grass under my feet would feel the same, that having someone with me was not going to change my sensual experience of this moment. It would simply be, I would be sharing that moment with someone, but my experience would not be different, because this is the vessel that is having this experience.
Absolutely.
And there's real freedom in that. There's real freedom in that. And I've kind of gone off at a tangent with that one. But the reason I've gone down that road is going back to say, you know, what you were saying before, or going back to what you were saying before, is that isolation is often caused by thinking that, you know, sorry, I've lost it there. I mean, I meant to say that it's about oh, no, I've lost it. I'm sorry.
That's right.
I got distracted by the camera coming up.
I know, because the camera went off. The isolation is often caused, I think, by what we think others think we should be doing, saying, being.
Yes, and that's what I was going to say. That investment of time and energy in finding out who you really are, that creates a clarity in that lens that you're seeing and feeling life through.
Yeah.
And when you spend time improving the clarity of that lens, you know, like getting it from a Skoda to, you know, a Jaguar or something, you're improving the quality of that lens to not project and not be projected upon with lots of flecks and distortions. And you are not only doing yourself a massive favor, you're doing the whole world a massive favor. So to me, it's not selfish to find out who you are. It's the opposite of selfish. You can't help the people in your life more. In fact, you will be a much better, more solid, enjoyable friend, partner, parent, colleague, everything, if you spend time finding out who you are.
Absolutely. And you take away that awful pressure from inside, that it's almost like an acidity inside, I think, when we're really in that anxious place and critical place.
Yeah, that's a good way of putting it. It is acidic, and pretty much how it makes our body feel as well, doesn't it? On a physical sense.
Yeah.
Yeah, I love that. It's very true.
Mm-hmm. So what an amazing opportunity to be able to talk to you like this. I have absolutely loved it, and I just love having these conversations. It's just so wonderful to chat to you, to chat with you.
Thank you so much for having me. I feel like that just flew by, actually. It's amazing when you talk about this from this place. To me, it's my favorite conversations, because you're actually talking about something that is so real.
Yes,
and
I
it's
agree.
like having a big drink of fresh water, you know. It's the best. It's magical. So thank you for allowing me the opportunity. I massively appreciate it.
Oh, absolute pleasure. Could you just tell people where they can find you if they want to look you up? And with your music and all these beautiful things that you do?
Absolutely. So if you want to learn a bit more about my inner wilding work, I have a website called wildnessrising.com, and you can find out all a bit about my backstory and the sort of sessions and work that I offer there. And if you want to learn about my music and a few other projects I'm going to be doing later next year as well, you can find all my music up at jobethyoung.com.
Amazing. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much. It's amazing. I've really enjoyed myself.
I would like to thank Jo Beth Young for joining me on this podcast. What a wonderful conversation we had, just talking about things that are so important for all of us to be aware of. And as I said at the beginning of the podcast, something that Jo really helped me start to understand the energies around us. And she describes it and helps us in such a magical way. She helps us to understand there's so much more out there than what our minds often tell us. And I also, from my own experience, I believe that she shows us the vision beyond the everydayness of life. So if you are interested in expanding your consciousness on any level, or you've been curious about, have you ever had that question where you thought, there must be more out there than this? I would really encourage you to speak to Jo and to see if she resonates with you. And wishing you all a beautiful day, and thank you so much for listening to the podcast.